It's been a long week. I Hi. Welcome back to Tip Reads Books, where I read books and I talk to you about them. I started a vlog. I started a vlog a little while ago, and I don't like it. I'm very unhappy with it's chaotic, it's messy, because my life has been chaotic. It's also very hot today, and I don't want to hook up the AC units because it's supposed to rain and be 55 tomorrow. 75 today, rainy and 55 tomorrow. Spring in the Pacific Northwest. So, my vlog. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what books I read, and then I'm going to show you some of the footage of the vlog that I like, which is my brother and I took my dog out to a lake, did a little hiking around the lake. We were hoping to find some shed antler. It's late in the season, but we thought we would have a look. I'm going to put up the video clips of us roaming around the woods with the dog, having a good day. It was sunny, it was nice out. I'm gonna put up those clips, and then I'm going to come back and tell you about what I read. But I will start off with saying I'm gonna discuss 3 horror books that are all different from each other, but I think all really solid horror entries. I'm gonna be talking about Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. I'm gonna talk about A House with Good Bones by Kingfisher, and Maeve Fly by C.J. Leeds, which I just finished a couple hours ago. And they all are so different, but I've finished them all like back to back to back, with one in the middle, which I'm gonna make its own video. So in the vlog, I also did read the Tommyknockers. I did a reread of the Tommyknockers by Stephen King, but I'm gonna do that in its own dedicated video. So for now, let's enjoy some of the PNW forest. So I hope you enjoyed some of that nature break. A little late for Earth Day, but I had to include it because it was just so soothing. It's been a while since I've been able to go out in the woods, so it was really fun. Okay. Let's start with Camp Damascus because I finished that one first. So Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle is one that I'd heard a lot of people, I'm gonna slide this way so I can have a little bit more room there. I've heard a lot of people talking about since it came out, and everyone was just like, oh my god, it's so good. And the synopsis on the back of the book is very vague. It says like in the Montana like mountains, there's this camp, and it's kind of what it tells you. It does say it's a conversion camp, so we know that from the synopsis, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the characters we're going to be following or anything like that. So I'm going to try to not give a whole lot of detail because I think it is nice to not have a lot of detail when you start this book because it is short. It's only about 256 pages in the digital edition, and I think the hardback edition too. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. We're following Rose, and Rose is part of a religious community that is very strict and has kind of its own set of rules. They follow their own prophet, and their prophet has some very specific tenets that they are to adhere to. And because of this, all the kids go away for 2 years around 5th grade, and so then when they come back, they enter the grade that they would have normally gone into. So all the kids are 2 years older. When we start off the book, we start off with like Rose as like with a group of teenagers talking about her high school graduation, and then we find out she's 20. And I don't think it was that, I mean, it was a reveal very early on in the book, so I don't think it's a spoiler to say it because it doesn't take away from the main thing of the story, but it's kind of nice to go in knowing what type of like religious trauma you're about to face on top of the conversion camp trauma. This book has a lot of trauma in it. But I think it's done in a very metaphorical way. There is not a lot of on-page torture or things like that to the like people in the book. It's more of a supernatural story. So I think that's kind of, for me, was nice to kind of have. So we're following Rose, and Rose is basically your normal Christian community member. She takes her religion very seriously, she takes her community very seriously, and she takes her life's purpose, which is existing to kind of be an example of the grace of God, very seriously. She is very much about keeping all things magic and supernatural out of your life, to not mess with those things. Even like Disney movies are like of the occult. And I'm gonna stop here for a second, because I actually grew up with one of my mom's like kind of mentors and closest friend who believed this. Her kids were not allowed to watch Disney movies. They weren't allowed to play games that used playing cards or any type of other cards, because all playing cards, according to her, are based on tarot. So they're all evil and invite evil spirits into your house. And there's a discussion in the beginning about Peter Pan, and about how Peter Pan is essentially adjacent to the occult, and because it talks about fairies and magic, and to watch that could be bringing a demon into your house. So I was already like, okay, the commentary here is commentarying for me, and I really enjoyed it. My road is a 35-mile-an-hour road. Anyway, so I liked that from the beginning. We're following, so Rose is, because of that, she's not on like the same kind of social level as the other kids in her grade, because she has kind of these different types of ways of interacting. But then we also learn later on that Rose is also on the autism spectrum, so there's going to be some differences there too. I'm like really leaning. I'm like really, I keep noticing my shoulders are like, but I have a tendency to lean. So anyway, I'm gonna try to like sit up straight here. So Rose, but even though Rose is trying to live this like very godly spiritual life, she's incredibly curious, and curiosity is looked down upon in her specific sect of Christianity. So she's trying to like toe this line, but she's a very like scientific type person, a very analytical person, a very logical person. And so she struggles a lot with wanting answers for things and not being allowed to get them, because it's against her religion to be that inquisitive. So she's also dealing with the fact that she's starting to see some weird things, and she's not quite sure why or what's happening. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave the synopsis, because we just follow her as she investigates, uses her like analytical, logical, scientific mind to figure out what is going on. And the fact that what's going on, as I said, there's a supernatural element to it, kind of breaks down a lot of things for her. And that part I found really fascinating. So mild spoilers right here for this. I will put like a timestamp to skip. Mild spoilers, I think, is that through this, she starts to kind of deconstruct her Christianity. And because this is so short, it happens very quick. But all the things that she's talking about are things that I experienced myself in my like early 20s as well, when I finally decided to acknowledge the fact that I no longer believed those things, because I was raised to believe them and I never felt anything from them. But I always was told that that's because there was something wrong with me. I wasn't being open enough. And so finally in my like, as like a 22-year-old, I was like, I basically admitted it to my family, and it's been a whole thing since then. But I had a lot of the same types of feelings that she's had and things that she's acknowledging. I'll put some of the quotes I did, like, because I got it from my library. I used Libby for this, and okay, so this is where the spoilers end. So I used Libby for this, and I'll put some of the quotes that I really liked up here, because I did highlight them, so they're saved in my Goodreads, because I used it through my Kindle. And I just, some of the stuff was just a really good representation, I think, of what was happening. The horror elements itself were kind of predictable, I think. I enjoyed them. It was kind of an eldritch horror-y type, second dimension type of stuff, and that was interesting, but also it felt kind of predictable with the way that it was set up, but I don't think that's bad. Like, we had enough foreshadowing to kind of figure out what was going on, but it wasn't like, the point of it wasn't to, you know, have a twist like thrown at you. The point of it was just to make you feel uncomfortable, and acknowledge things, I think anyway. So I really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read. I finished this in a few hours, and I'm kind of a slow reader. I sub-vocalize, so it's really hard for me to read things quickly. I think my Kindle said 4.5 hours it actually took me to finish it, which is really good for me. So that is Camp Damascus. I highly recommend it. If you like religious horror with like a religious element to the trauma, if you like religious trauma stories, it's queer, it is sapphic, and there are multiple queer characters in it, and it does deal with some queer trauma though. So take a look at the story graph. I'll pop them up here. I'll take a screenshot and pop them up here of the warnings. It is gory, it is bloody, but I don't think it's not as bad as some other things I read, like one of the things I'm going to talk about. Okay, so this kind of goes, let's definitely do A House with Good Bones next. So let's talk about A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I love T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is fast becoming one of my favorite authors. I love her sense of humor. I liked her horror and her fantasy. They had very different vibes, but also felt very samesies in a lot of ways. I like how she writes her female characters. I like how she writes her older female characters. I like how she writes intelligent characters, and I like her wit and her humor a lot. So she really works for me. So I decided I've been wanting to read A House of Good Bones, and Libby had it on audio available, so I snapped it up before somebody else did. And as soon as I got it, it was like, one person is waiting, and I was like, I'm hurrying. So I flew through this one. This is only like a 7-hour audiobook, I think, like right about 7 hours. And I could not put it down. I read it all, like I listened all through the weekend. I took the dog for like an extra long walk. I did some extra cleaning so I could keep listening, and have excuses to. I listened while my boyfriend and I were playing Civilization, which is funny because the character in House of Good Bones mentions playing Civilization. I was like, oh, that's funny. I just did that. Anyway, so House of Good Bones. I'm going to put up this cover, or if I already have, I don't know, but this is the new paperback cover, I think, that's coming out, because this is what Amazon has if you click the paperback option, and I adore this cover. Like, I might buy this book just because of this cover. I love it so much. So anyway, House of Good Bones. We are following, what is her name? Sam. We're following Sam. And Sam is a archaeological entomologist. So she studies bugs that are with not bones, but just because bones is in the name of the book, she studies bugs from archaeological dig sites. She talks a lot about the type of bugs that are in people's like grain storage and stuff, can tell you a lot about their culture, what type of grain they had, and all that type of stuff. There's a lot of scientific facts pushed in here. A lot of references to academia and the shithole that it is to be in academia while being ultimately satisfying, but a ripoff monetarily. That's why I'm not in academia anymore. But I miss it with my whole heart and hate it with every fiber of my being. It's a very weird feeling. So she talks a lot about that, but wind it back. So we're following Sam, and her dig just got canceled because they discovered human remains, and she was actually going to do a dig up here in the PNW, and the remains it's near this doesn't really matter, but I just liked that it was included. It's near some Native American heritage sites, and so the tribes have to look at everything, figure out who the bones belong to, if they're allowed to continue the dig, returning them, and all that stuff. So it could take months until she gets to go back to her dig, which was supposed to be 6 months. And she talks about how she was super excited about it because she doesn't get to go out on digs. So she sublet her room already. So now she's got at least a month till they sort it out. So she decides to go visit her mom in North Carolina. And she hasn't seen her mom in a while. And her mom is now living in Sam's grandmother's house. Her mom's mom. Grand May was her name, or what they called her. And she was not a nice lady. She was kind of your old school, stereotypical Southern woman who wanted everything to be proper and godly and like clean, and they use the phrase nice and normal like constantly. And Sam was not nice and normal. When she lived with her when she was a child for a period of time, and then they inherited the house and moved back. And when Sam's mom first inherited the house, the first thing they did was paint everything bright colors. And now that Sam is back visiting, the house is suddenly ecru. She makes a lot of comments about it being ecru and beige and taupe. If you've seen me, like, you can see the color of my wall behind my shelf. It's that color. I hate that color, but I don't own this place, so I can't paint. So anyway, it's that color again. There's like old paintings up and stuff that she's in. Like, her mom is acting very anxious and like on edge, and while that's semi-normal from her mom, this is like a step above. So she's like concerned about it and trying to figure out what's going on, and she's not sure if her mom is maybe experiencing some early onset dementia or if there's something else. So as we kind of follow her as she kind of like meanders through her life with her mom. We learn a lot about her, we learn a lot about her job, and things start getting creepy. She starts having some sleep paralysis, and her mom starts getting more and more worried about the things going on in the house. And this becomes a Southern Gothic horror with a large amount of humor and wit to it. And I was here for every moment of it. Like I said, there was so much snark about academia. There were comments on taxonomy being the reason that biologists drink. And I was like, this species of fish I worked with. Anyway, so there's lots of things that I just identified with a lot. And I really liked Sam. I liked her character arc. I liked the story. I liked how she, again, much like Rose, was a very analytical character who took things very logical and was very studious about them, and was not okay with all of this supernatural stuff because this is not logical. This doesn't make sense. And so I really kind of appreciated a character who was like, no, this can't be happening, and is very skeptical, and even being skeptical while things are being thrown in their face, but having to kind of pull from within themselves something else to be able to handle the situation. Sam, at the end of it, still doesn't necessarily believe in all things supernatural, but she believes she experienced something that she can't explain. And I kind of really liked that a lot. There was a lot of talk about gardens and the importance of nature and community, and lots of like things about gentrification, and I just really enjoyed the commentary while still being a good story and not kind of browbeating you with it. And it's the same thing with Camp Damascus. There was some good stuff in there that just, it didn't browbeat you with it. It was just part of the story. So the two kind of go together. I will say, so I listened to the audiobook, and the audio narrator was not my favorite. I struggled a little bit because of the voices that she was using for the men. They sounded like old fuddy-duddy grandpas, and one of them was supposed to be kind of like a love interest. Like, she kept talking about his like biceps. Like, there was a couple of times about his biceps and all the muscles under his shirt because he's a gardener, and he's a master gardener actually. But she kept talking about like all of his muscles and stuff, and then his voice is like this old grandpa voice, and I was like, what is this? Like, he's supposed to be 28 and he sounds like he's like on his deathbed. I was so confused by it. And then her mom is like in her late 50s, and she gave her this like shaky old grandma voice, and I was like, what? And then there's a woman down the street who's like 70, and she had this like proper calm voice, and I was so confused because I was like, I don't understand what you're doing with these voices of these people. I am very confused. And then the main character, Sam, so she grew up in North Carolina, moved to Tucson. So did her brother, grew up in North Carolina, moved to Tucson. Her and her brother both live in Tucson. When she talks to her brother on the phone, he has a Southern accent. Sam does not have a Southern accent. I was so confused. Every now and then a word or two would have a Southern accent, and I was like, I just don't think this narrator is like working for me. I think I probably would have given this, I gave it a 4.5, and it probably would have been higher if I'd actually physically read it, because some of the stuff was just so frustrating to me that I had to get past the sound of the voice and listen to the words, because I was like, is this story annoying me, or is the voice annoying me? So, but otherwise, really, really enjoyed it. Okay. something completely different. All right, I need a drink for this. All right, let's talk about Maeve Fly. I don't know how I feel about this, so we'll find out as we go. I have opinions. Maeve Fly follows Maeve Fly. Here's the cover, okay? This cover is stunning. I love this cover. I saw some editions that had this cover, and I was not a fan, but I love this cover. I love this cover. So throughout the book, Maeve constantly asks us, why are all the misanthropes in books, like classic books and well-loved books, why are all the misanthropes men? Why do men get to be that way? There's a comment in the beginning of the book that I don't remember word for word, and I could probably pull up the quote because it's the first like couple sentences of the book and put it here, but it talks about how men kind of do this thing where they get married, they have kids, and then they wait for their wife to ruin it so that they can have their breaking point and just be shitty humans because somebody did them wrong, so they can do that. And she was like, why do men get to do that? Why do men get to be shitty just because somebody was shitty to them? But why do we need someone to be shitty to us just to be shitty? The world is full of shitty people. Why can't I be shitty? That was a lot of shitty. Sorry. And so Maeve herself is kind of exemplifying all of these traits of every like trope of a misanthropic man in a horror or thriller or European classic, essentially. She is selfish. She's egotistical. She believes she's the smartest person wherever she goes. She thinks that people who do things that she doesn't like do them because they're unintelligent. She thinks that kind people are fake. She thinks that she needs to take whatever she can from each moment because everyone else is doing the same. She believes that everyone is wearing a mask constantly all the time. Like all of these types of things, right? All of these very, I'm 14 and this is deep type of things. And I, in the beginning was like, okay, I can kind of get on board with this because I feel like we're not supposed to like this character. She was extremely unlikable. And so I found myself going, is she unlikable because she's unlikable, or am I not liking her because it is a woman exhibiting those traits? But I also don't like male characters who exhibit those traits at this stage in my life. I was trying to remember if I did when I was a teenager. I don't think so, but I don't remember. So, but it kind of felt like some of the opinions and thoughts that I'd had as a teenager. Granted, I did not take anything so far. So Maeve has two people in the world that she loves. She has her grandmother and her friend Kate. And that's it. She knows that when those two people are gone, she's all alone because she has a wolf inside of her, which is another one of those tropes where I'm like, man, we gotta do the edgy wolf thing. But it worked. It worked. So she ends up living with her grandmother after she leaves college and her parents kind of disown her. And she goes to live with her grandmother, who also was not close with her father. She'd never met her grandmother. And her and her grandmother are instantly like kindred spirits, basically. So we kind of spend the rest of the book unraveling what it is Maeve is actually hiding. Because she's like, I'm so not like the other girls, but I'm really not like the other girls. Like, it's kind of like she's very judgy of other women while also like talking them up at the same time, like talking about how beautiful they are, like constantly, which also is a very weird kind of, it's that same type of shitty dude vibe. And it's interesting. So she works at Disney. We never call it Disney, but it's the happiest place on earth, so it's Disney. And she plays the ice princess. She plays Elsa. So we get all these like allusions to her playing Elsa and her actually looking like Elsa. She's thin. We constantly talk about how little she eats, and or how she's not eating. She drinks a lot. She does a lot of coke. She doesn't eat. So she's very thin, and she has ice blue eyes and long, nearly white blonde hair. So because of this, she talks about how because she looks the way she does, she can get away with a lot of things, which is a very interesting commentary that, it's a common discussion. Pretty privilege and all that we have constantly in certain internet spaces. So it wasn't necessarily doing anything new, but it was doing all of them at the same time, which was interesting in itself. So we follow her as she becomes more deranged, more just derailed, more mentally unstable, more unhinged in her behavior, and just spirals into this whole thing where she's convinced that her grandmother has a terminal illness and her best friend is trying to be an actress. And she's convinced that once those two people move on to the next stages, she will be completely and utterly alone forever. And I kind of like that what we're doing is we're following her as she's spiraling and making that happen, essentially, with each of her choices. And it's that aspect of it worked for me. I think the ending was really satisfying, and that's what kept it at a 4. Otherwise, it was sitting at like a 3.5 because I was annoyed by her. But I liked the commentary, and I liked that I was supposed to be annoyed by her. Like, I don't think we were supposed to like anybody in this book. Everyone in this book was fucking shitty. Like, everybody in this book. And I think that was the point. That was what it was doing. It made references to all these different horror books, things I'd never heard of. Like, not even horror, but like just kind of classic weird books too, like old weird books. It made all of these constant references, so it was trying to make a point, and I think it was making that point even with me not knowing all of these things. I see this referenced as a lot of times like American Psycho for the girlies, but I never watched it or read it, so I can't. I watched Bates Motel, but I didn't watch the other ones. I never watched American Psycho. I never read the book. Anyway, so I can't say that, but what I can say is that it references Fight Club a bit. It references some of the things that it references. I could see the cultural implications and the cultural ideations that it was pulling from to kind of make the story that it was trying to make and make the point it was trying to make. And I think it did that well. It may have been heavy-handed at times, but I think it did that well. I will say this is another one. I will put the content warnings up here from Storygraph because this was a lot. There are a lot of references to bodily fluids, to excrement. There are a lot of, there are some essay scenes, there's one essay scene and there is one like discussion of an essay scene without it happening on page. But she tells you what she is going to do. There's just no like explanation of it happening. There is other weird things that are pretty gory and graphic and gross. This book was gross. But I didn't hate that it was gross. I just found myself in my car being like, like a lot, being like, oh no, please don't do that on page. Like, there were a lot of those moments, especially near the end of the book when I was driving home today. I was like, I can't do this in traffic. I can't do this in traffic. Please, can we not do this in traffic? So, yeah, there was some of that. I was glad it was a very sunny, bright day. But, so I still don't know. I think it's about a 4. It's a hard one to recommend to people though, because it was so specific. I'm trying to like look at my shelf and think back to things. I don't think I've read too many things where we follow from the villain, essentially. So I don't necessarily have anything to like compare it to. But it was one of those things where I don't think you're supposed to like anybody. So, in some aspects it reminded me, I don't know, it was a spiral. It was an unreliable narrator who became increasingly unreliable as the book went on, and unlikable. If you like unlikable female characters, this is an unlikable female character. She was pretentious and arrogant and all of the gints. Just, yeah, she was just all of the things that I don't necessarily like in a human being. But yeah. Oh, it also had a lot of graphic sex scenes in it. So there's that too, that were consensual. A lot of consensual graphic sex scenes. Not what I was expecting, because I haven't seen anyone like actually like talk about what to expect in this book. I have just seen it called American Psycho for the girlies, and maybe it is. but maybe I'll add that to my list of things to read this year. Anyway, those are the 3 things that I have read recently. We'll talk about the Tommyknockers, another one, and I'm working my way through Pinata. I have just decided that this is a horror month, so I was gonna try and finish this for this video, but I have been so busy and getting home so late that it's just not happening. So I'm gonna go and read this tonight and spend some more time with it because I'm really, really enjoying it. This is a possession story, partly set in Mexico, inspired by Mexican myths and legends, and it is actually really good. It's a really interesting story about family as well that I'm really enjoying. So, family and misogyny and all that stuff. Anyway, oh, it's been a week and it's only Tuesday. I've consumed half of my adult beverage. I'm going to go upstairs and consume the rest and edit this. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for listening to me talk about these books. If you have read any of these 3 horror books, let me know in the comments because I am very curious what you think of them. Because yeah, I'm still not sure about Maeve Fly, but I did enjoy it. I think I enjoyed it. Oh, you know what I want to say about it? When I was listening to it, I was like, isn't this kind of what people were saying they were getting from Butcher and the Blackbird, but it had way more sex in it? So if you've read both those books, please let me know if you think there's a similarity between the 2. I haven't read Butcher and the Blackbird, but I've seen everybody talking about it. I've watched spoiler-filled reviews because I know it's not going to be for me, so I just watched everyone tell me exactly what happened in the book, and I feel like there's kind of some similarities, so let me know if you think there is, because maybe if you liked that, you might like this. So anyway, I'll talk to you later.